This program was brought to you by Organo Gold. Organo Gold is a health and wellness company that provides healthy coffees, teas, and chocolate. All one has to do is consume the available coffee, teas, chocolate, and other products to get all the available benefits. One can also share these products with others to help them improve their health as well.
And now, Fairfax Breakfast Club with your host, Bazil Lemba.
Welcome to the Fairfax Breakfast Club show. My name is Bazil Lemba and I will be your host. The Fairfax Breakfast Club is a weekly program in which we bring to you valuable and workable know-how you can use to improve your networking skills and grow your business. On this specific show, however, we will be addressing a very fundamental subject known as education. We always start the show with a quote, and today's quote is, "Education is the movement from darkness to light," and that is from Alan Bloom. Today's guest is a very special person, someone who's heavily involved in education, firsthand that is, and she is a teacher, and she's passionate, I might add. I'm going to let her introduce herself today on the show. Hello, Meg.
Hello, Bazil. How are you?
Good, how about you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Excellent. We never had an educator on our show. This is the first.
Wonderful.
Which means that I better do a good job.
No pressure. Thank you for having me, though. It's wonderful.
My pleasure. My first question to you is, how do you get into education?
I didn't actually think that education was going to be my road.
Mm-hmm.
I got out of undergrad and I thought I was going to be in publishing.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent about a year editing medical texts, copy editing, and then I discovered that I was bored with it because it was long hours and it was just basically looking for grammatical mistakes. And so I took a year to kind of figure things out, and then I went to graduate school at Virginia Tech, and I got my English education degree, master's degree, and then from there I went into teaching.
Very good.
Yeah, so it wasn't the original road because I thought I was going to be an editor of sorts, but it's the best road that I've taken.
Okay.
So. Yeah.
Well, did this help you in a way, what you did before?
It did, yes, because it essentially trained my eye for editing to be able to kind of spot mistakes and also pay attention to consistency in writing and flow. Even though I was editing for copy-related mistakes, still kind of the functionality of writing and also the cohesion of it, it made me kind of more aware.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good, actually. Now, education, that's a big word.
It is. It's a huge topic.
What do you think of it? What it is? What is it for you?
Education can mean so many things. I think in the year that we are, 2015, education is not just one definition. It's varied in many respects. And so people have this kind of idea that what does it mean to be well-educated? Well-educated, and just from reading kind of a little bit the other day by Alfie Kohn, who wrote an article that I was reading called "What Does It Mean to Be Well-Educated?" He's also written a subsequent book about it as well, is the idea that people equate being educated with the amount of class time that you are in like a classroom and the hours you put into learning. But the idea is that really true? In terms of being educated, is it following your passion? Is it being involved in something that has kind of like a sustainability for you as a person, something that you are able to kind of work with in society and be able to support yourself? And education is essentially key. But where we are today, education comes in through with our kids in terms of technology. So being educated in terms of, history and math and English, but also do you have viable skills in terms of how related you are to technology and essentially what's expected.
Interesting. How do you get to become well educated then?
I think for myself, I think that there's a difference with education between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. I definitely had parents who
You
were...
gotta explain that to me.
Okay. Okay, so intrinsic motivation, meaning it comes from inside, meaning you're propelled to do something, whatever it may be. And then extrinsic would be like, something from the outside, whereas your mother or your father, says you need to do this and this is how you need to go along learning or being educated. And for me, I think that I had parents who were very educated, and there was definitely that extrinsic motivation that they had a certain requirement of me as a student, but also the intrinsic motivation, I would think, came more in my high school years, preferably toward the end, and then also into college and graduate school. And the idea of, with education, what we talk to the kids about is once you are educated and you receive your degree, whatever that may be, no one can take that away from you. And the idea that that will sustain you. So relationships may come and go, and money may come and go, but to be educated and have a degree, that is solid. And so the point of having that kind of integrity within yourself that comes through going to school, technical school, college, whatever route it is, and feeling as though you're authentically engaged.
That's interesting, It's very interesting because one of the quotes we mentioned, we talk about Breakfast Club, and one of the quotes that we have on our newsletter is from Bill Gates.
Okay.
Bill Gates said he's very concerned because kids tell to the parent, well, he's the first person in the world, the richest person in the man. He didn't go to school. Why should I go to school?
Right.
And say, first of all, I did not go to school. I said, I love my years in university, and I wish I stayed there.
Yeah.
And he said what happened is that when he was in school, the idea of microcomputer was just so strong that he couldn't wait.
Right.
That's why he left.
Right.
But there's a misunderstanding that, he didn't have a diploma, whatever, so therefore, no.
Right.
And then he says, in today's world, really, as it is, you have to be educated.
Right.
And it goes so fast. Technologies are changing so fast that you got to be on top of it.
Right. I think that that's really important, and I think that one thing about being educated is, there's an idea within society that to be educated is, from a college, essentially. Like everybody should be kind of geared toward a certain direction. But education, like I said, is so varied that you could be considered well-educated based on the technical college you went to or what you were able to succeed through that. So I don't think that the classical education is everyone's route, but I still think that you are educated. And I think right now, you're talking about technology, one thing that we really strive for in the classroom is bringing in authentic learning. And like talking about Bill Gates, the idea that he was so motivated to start on this computer. The idea with authentic education is finding something that kids will grasp onto, and what are they interested in, and then playing off those interests. So one thing in terms of my teaching is that we teach, but we also try to bridge it out to the world at large. If you're able to connect what you teach in the classroom with something that's kind of a bigger world view, you're able to engage a lot more, because they don't see it as a secular kind of thing. They see it as though, this applies to beyond. And so that comes in with, bringing in articles, news articles, issues that you can connect with the media today. Also bringing in public speakers, taking them on trips. The idea where you're trying to engage authentically and get them to be interested. And that doesn't come through just, worksheets. That comes from really thinking about the world at large and through engagement.
So you think education is highly valuable?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
In a variety of ways.
That's interesting. What are the challenges you see in education?
Challenges, I think, right now in terms of teaching, are the fact that we have to compete with technology in a lot of ways. And technology is a definite plus, it's a definite positive, but the drawbacks are kids, most of them have phones. They also are on the internet a great deal. They're very savvy when it comes to technology. And we kind of fight the battle with the phones like in the classroom. And and we teach on a 90-minute block. And so the idea is if you can get on your phone or on a video game and you can kind of, scroll through to the next page, or if you don't like something, you can just click it to the next, your attention span starts becoming smaller. So if you have, like myself, and there's 30 students in the classroom, we might skip, from subject to a different area, maybe in the next 10 to 15 minutes, but it's not like an instantaneous switch. So being able to keep the attention span of students is important, but sometimes, it may be linked to the idea that technology and how quickly you can change the page, you can't do that in kind of the regular classroom.
I have a question. Do students bring their phone in your class, in the course?
They do, and it's not a problem because they're very, respectful for the most part in terms of keeping it away and turning it off. But
do they really do that? I'm just curious.
No, they do, at least where I am.
Okay.
So, it does provide a challenge, but the other thing that a lot of teachers, and myself, I've kind of tried this a little bit, is engaging them with lessons using technology, not just in terms of using it to do searches or things like that, but many teachers have incorporated Twitter with their teaching, especially with English, in terms of maybe writing the concise, thought in 25, I don't know what, 25 characters or something like that, and really kind of thinking how they're thinking. And that's so innovative and maybe is a little bit challenging in the beginning, but that's kind of the idea and where that's moving. Using blogs, kind of having kids write in that format, also being able for them to explore different varying ideas of PowerPoint and movie, iMovie. And the best part is sometimes if you have an idea for, say, iMovie, most of the kids have smartphones and that's already on there. So there's no kind of looking around for things that you can use because they have all the technology on hand. So it teaches them sometimes an aspect of a phone that they own. So that's kind of the challenge. So here we are as educators, this is what we want you to learn. It's the vehicle in which we have to carry the education. That becomes the challenge. And it's a good challenge because I think that, with any career or anything you're involved in, you always have to challenge yourself to think, how can this be better? How can we push the envelope? How can we be competitive with other countries and also within this nation? So.
Interesting. It's definitely a whole lot different than what's happening when I was going to study. That's good. Now, how about reading? Reading is an interesting topic. Currently, we're finding that students do not do enough reading. They do reading in the classroom for what maybe books they're assigned, but in terms of reading on their own, we really are trying to essentially support students and having them read more. For my class that I teach, one of my classes that I teach, we actually do have silent sustained reading for about 10 to 15 minutes every time I see them, which is essentially every other day. And so during that time, they're reading and I'm reading too. And people will say, well, you should be doing something else, or you should be, checking on what have you, progress. But one of the ideas is that they don't see enough reading being modeled, perhaps in their own houses. So by sitting there and me reading it, they kind of see that everybody's engaged in terms of the literacy. And the other part about them reading on their own within the classroom, and many teachers do this silent sustained reading portion, is that they're choosing their own texts. So I don't say, hey, Bobby, here's a book. You need to read this. They have the autonomy to choose whatever they like. So therefore, they're engaged, they're interested. Maybe it's a book they've heard about, but they sit there and they read for that time. And that little bit of reading, aside from what they're reading for their subjects for my class, I find is really helpful. And so right now, the schools are pushing, literacy across the curriculum and how important that is. So literacy should just not be contained to, your English and history classes, but also all subjects, so that kind of literacy can really be, supported and celebrated in all the different subjects. So I think reading is an important thing. And also at the higher levels, especially of subject matter, one of the things that we always tell the parents is
make sure that you're talking to your kids about current events and things that you're reading, because that really makes an impact on, their interest level and also their awareness. So reading is a critical thing, and not just reading websites and blogs, but actually, reading novels, the idea of character development, plot development, irony, things that we touch on in school but can be more developed with a book of their choice.
I think that's a major issue.
Absolutely.
Very, very major. Because otherwise, how would you? I mean, yeah, they can read the website or what have you, whatever else, but the bulk of culture, sitting in a novel and reading and what have you.
Right. Yeah, and being able to look for theme and, that kind of idea, which if they go into like an AP level class, depending on if they are in that for 11th grade or 12th grade, and even collegiate level, they're asking students to, analyze a quote or to connect a quote to themselves and, the world at large, or when they go into their English classes in college, coming up with your own thesis. And all of this is coming through, perhaps books you've read that you can connect to a book you're reading right now. But if you're not well read, it's very hard to kind of put together that kind of writing. So,
well, the other factors also is the reason I mentioned reading is take two kids who've seen the same movie. You ask them about it, they say the exact precise same thing. But you give them a book, and you ask them about it. Everybody has
an opinion.
Their rendition of it, meaning open to imagination, what have you.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's definitely a major factor. Now, on one of the documents you sent me, you mentioned the mores as very valuable in terms of education. M-O-R-E-S.
Mores, yeah.
Mores. I'm improving my English. Tell us a bit about it.
I think that in terms of kind of mentioning the social skills and mores is we're talking about technology, like an etiquette related to technology, and in terms of writing an email to your teacher, in terms of your employer, what that takes in terms of your tone and the way that you're setting up your emails, kind of touching on that. Also business letters, how you address people that may employ you, future internships, things like that. So in terms of social mores, I think more along the lines of an etiquette related to technology that we can tie in with writing. And so we're not only teaching kids like please and thank you, but now in this way where a lot of communication is done through email, it's done through a variety of technology-based communication, having it be part of the class where we're giving them marketable skills, where when people read their emails or read their cover letters, they're not like, this is not well done, but the idea that comes across as your first impression. So kind of focusing on that. And then the idea with these skills, having them be marketable. So will somebody hire you based on what you put in an email, what you put in, a PowerPoint skills. I did some adjunct teaching at a college for a while. And obviously, I didn't have these kids at the high school level. They came from all over the nation. And, having them read something and then saying, all right, well, now you guys are going to do a presentation via PowerPoint to your peers, and how awful they were. And when asking them about PowerPoints, one of the greatest responses was, well, we never were told, what was effective or what was ineffective or what was considered, okay in terms of text and things like that. So even at this level, at the high school level, teachers will push those skills, because when you're doing a presentation to your business colleagues or in a collegiate environment, that will come across in terms of a first impression. So skills like that are marketable but also transferable.
That's very important, because to me, at least the way I see it, more is it's a fundamental part of education. You can know everything in the world, but if you don't have those. In fact, when you say that, when you mentioned that, I thought of a book which they'll put on the screen. It's called The Way to Happiness, which has been translated in over 55 languages worldwide. Wow. It comes in a big book itself, as well as a small pamphlet that people can produce and pass out. The worldwide has have a major effect. If you ask me, that's the basis of it. You have mores and you have education on top of it. Because if that's not in place, which is the fundamental of it, what if you have somebody who has a PhD and then he's coming and then he's pushing everybody else because he wants to be first?
Right.
I think hustle everybody else, that's not quite. If it's not considered by other people, then we have a problem. It almost people probably feel sorry about him.
Right. Yeah.
Because the fundamentals are not there.
Right. And I mean, when you talk about education, you talk about teaching, it's so multifaceted because you are teaching things like English and history and math, but the teachers that, I'm lucky enough to know in my life, and who are my colleagues as well, they teach things like responsibility, accountability, owning up essentially to things that you've done wrong, being a person of character, a person of ethics. These are also skills that, possibly students have gotten in their own homes, but we as educators also model and want the best for these students. So therefore, when they leave the high school level, we want them to be educated in terms of what they went there to get their, high school diploma for, but also things that make up a good human.
You're absolutely right. And the thing of it may not happen at home necessarily. The parents may not be there or various things may be in place. I think that you teachers are put in a position where, not that you have to do it, but watch it. If you see it, act on it, because obviously there's a miss somewhere.
Right. Possibly.
I think that's, as I said, if you have somebody who has a PhD and we're waiting for him and then come push everybody and to get there, it's very PhD, because the foundation is not in place.
Right. No, I agree.
Now, you do other things. You have worked with some nonprofit organizations and what have you. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yes. So currently I'm on the board of directors for a group called the Afghan Women's Writing Project. And the Afghan Women's Writing Project is a group of women who have come together to support the education of Afghan women located in Afghanistan, specifically in Kabul and the surrounding areas. And so this organization is funded solely based on the charity work that we do in terms of fundraising as board members, and also through benefactors. And so the whole idea is that we take women who want to be educated in this area of Afghanistan, and they basically risk their lives in many ways to go to these writing salons where they meet covertly, and they are run by instructors, and they're taught how to write, how to read in varying levels, their own language sometimes, and in English. And the best thing about the project is that our website, awwproject.org, their writings are put on the website. So people like you or myself or anybody from all over the world can comment on these writings. And people have said in the past, well, all you're doing is making a comment. But if you have never really written anything before and you write something and it's received, somebody says, oh, that touched me, that made me think of something differently, what that does for these women in terms of their self-esteem and who they are as humans. And the whole idea of the African Women's Writing Project is to tell one's story as a human right. The idea that nobody should be subjugated based on their gender and kind of treated less than. So education and the power of it in a place like Afghanistan is so important. And this not-for-profit, the African Women's Writing Project, has saved lives and built women just through education.
Now, you say they risk their lives. What I mean, they're not allowed to rise, they're not supposed to allow to go and learn? Is that what you meant?
No, I mean, in Afghanistan, it depends on, of course, the influence that you're surrounded by in terms of your family. Many of these women, the male influence in their life, possibly their husband or their father, they are not in support of the women being educated. And so they especially if they are, found out to be being educated and they haven't been, granted permission and there's not support, grievous things can happen. So it really is a risk for a lot of them. There are some women who obviously have supportive family members, and that's terrific, but the majority of them, education is a privilege and not a right. And so really trying to be educated is something that's important. Right now, one of the endeavors is being a board member, not only the fundraising part, which has been fun for me, but also I've been building their writing curriculum. So I write lessons based on the curriculum that I teach here, and then I also use iPad that tapes me teaching the lesson. So over is sent to Afghanistan the lesson plan, which is taught by the instructor, but then they also can see me in the video teaching. So now we have not only women who are interested in reading and writing, but now we have lessons that are based on pedagogy in terms of actual writing curriculum.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it's really a wonderful project.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, you're able to take what you're doing and translate it into the nonprofit arena, helping people far and away.
Exactly. Because, one thing we're talking about authentic learning, it would be wonderful one day if these salons in Kabul are up and running, so many women are involved that, in fact, we could perhaps Skype with students here in the United States, and the idea of collaborative learning, not just through collaborative in the United States, collaborative in Afghanistan, but collaborative internationally, and what that could do, and how important that would be.
Very good. Now, what are the last words you have for a nice, fine audience over here regarding education?
Final words regarding education. I think that education is something that is always changing. The idea where people will say, well, in my day it wasn't like this, or when I was in school 20 years ago, it wasn't like this, and that's not a bad thing. The idea that we have to look at education as something that's positive because it's always evolving, and therefore if we are really interested in the future of children, then we need to evolve as well.
Okay. Well said.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to thank you very much for coming on our show.
Thank you, Bazil. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. And as for the guests, I want to remind you that we host a monthly breakfast event in Fairfax. Oh, by the way, I have some news for you. We just moved that event. We host it now at the Best Western in Fairfax, which is 3535 Chenbridge Road, the second or Thursday of the month. You can find out the exact precise date on our website, which is blnbc.com. I also want to remind you that we have a major expo coming up on May 22nd, so check it out. We still have room there for exhibitors as well as sponsors. And the website for that one is ultbizexpo.com. Again, ultbizexpo.com. That's what we have for today, and I also want to remind you that our show is running 3 times a week. On Tuesday at 9 p.m. on Cox Communication Channel 10, Wednesday right after midnight, also Saturday at 2 o'clock. So you can catch all our shows there, or you can also follow those you have not seen on our website, blnbc.com, our past show. We have well over 100 sitting there for you to enjoy and use. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Bazil.
We'll do that again some other time.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
You're very welcome. As for the guests, I thank you for tuning in, and we're looking forward to seeing you next time. For now, have a good night. Bye-bye.
This program was brought to you by Organo Gold. Organo Gold is a health and wellness company that provides healthy coffees, teas, and chocolate. All one has to do is consume the available coffee, teas, chocolate, and other products to get all the available benefits. One can also share these products with others to help them improve their health as well.